How are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you. I'm just gonna give it just a couple of minutes and let just a couple more people come in. But I
Okay.
just want to thank you for taking your time out on a Sunday and on Valentine's Day. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for that. I'm really excited
No
about this
problem.
interview. Really excited.
Yes, it's always good to spread the truth and talk about our great history. So
Yes,
I
because it's
always make time for that.
yes, because it is great. And so we're gonna tell the people we're gonna be their personal griot today.
All right. All right.
So I'm just gonna start probably like 12:02 or so, and we'll start with the questions and
Okay.
stuff.
Okay. Sounds good.
And then, well, if you can introduce yourself, you can tell us who you are.
Okay. My name is Emmanuel Kulu. I am the author of I, Black Pharaoh, Rise to Power. I am also the author of I, Black Pharaoh, Golden Age of Triumph, which we will be releasing in the spring. I, Black Pharaoh, Rise to Power is out right now. The second book is the Golden Edition. It will have 20 illustrations in it. I'm also an African historian. I've been studying African history for the last 5 years, but typically all my life as well through my lineage of Cameroon from my father. So
Okay.
um, it's always been a part of my life, and I want to share it with the diaspora as well.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So you say your father's from Cameroon. Where's your mother from?
She's from Chicago.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm truly like an African American, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like my father being from Africa and my mom being from here in Chicago in the States.
Right. Just like me, I used to, my name before it was Izzy Rose was Agusi with collard greens, and
Oh, okay.
people never understood that. I'm like, my dad is from Nigeria, my mom was from Dallas, I'm from the South. So I'm like, we do
Okay.
greens and cornbread and all that kind of stuff down here.
Yeah, yeah. You guys eat fufu?
Of
You
course,
guys eat fufu? Yeah, of course. Okay. Okra
yes,
soup and
everything.
peanut butter soup and
Yes, yes. My dad,
yeah, yeah.
he was a fantastic cook, so we ate
My
everything,
father too.
everything.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and jump into the interview. And again, I just want to thank you for joining me today. And so we're going to start. You told us a little bit about your lineage. And did you
Mhm,
go to school for history, or is this? I know you said you started doing research about 5 years ago.
mhm.
What piqued your interest? What made you start wanting to go into like learning more about your heritage?
Well, I've always been taught my heritage by my father since I was a very young man. And
Okay.
as a young man, growing up with the last name Kulu,
Mm-hmm.
very close, derived from the Zulu tribe, the Bantu. So, sometimes growing up, some of my peers would always ask me about Africa. Do we have lions in the backyard? And I would always find myself having to defend
Yes.
Africa and our
Yes.
African history, so to speak. So I was always teaching in that fashion.
Okay.
But what really sparked me was a young man when me and my father created a sculpture for a project that I was assigned to do,
Okay.
and it was of King Tut. And my
Okay.
father made sure we made King Tut with brown skin as a black African.
Okay.
And I took the project to school and I got a B minus.
Really?
And there were no other sculptures up there. I mean, that any other student had presented. And I was like, how did I get a B minus?
Right.
I should have got the best grade in the class. My presentation was flawless.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my father was there. And when he heard about the grade, he was very upset.
Of
And I
course.
recall him arguing with my teacher about it, and she kept saying, well, it's historically inaccurate.
Hmm.
And that really piqued my interest to learning about the Black African origins of ancient Egypt growing up as a man.
Okay.
So I've always kind of carried that knowledge with me. But over time, the last 5 years, I didn't go to school for it. I went to school for social work.
Okay.
So I was self-taught. I was self-taught these things, and also from my father, and just studying guys like Dr. Ben, Sheka Anta Diop, um, Ivan Van Sertima, Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Henry Clark, just so many of these great philosophers who also spoke on this. And just collaborating with people like Vanessa Davies, an Egyptologist who
Yes.
speaks on the Black African origins. Also, Dr. Sally Ann Ashton, Dr. Solange Ashby, who is the only Black Egyptologist. So I've been privileged to be amongst these individuals who
Okay.
speak about the African truth. So over the last 5 years, I was in the, before that, I was in the music industry.
Mm,
Um,
okay.
yes, I was a hip hop artist, and I also was a hip hop producer a
Okay.
long time. Yeah, and I produced for some major artists, which I can't really disclose because of non-disclosure agreements. But I did work with some major artists in the industry. But ultimately, I really wanted to get back to my history. Like I was really got really going with this book thing after Black Panther came out, because I was like, wow,
Okay.
this is the time. This
Yeah.
is the time where people are interested in Africa again.
Yes.
So that's what really got me back into it. But I
Okay.
was always studying, always researching, kind of always debating on the miseducation of African history. Yeah.
It is a constant battle, especially when you're over here and you're born here. So it's like
Hmm.
you're always feeling like you have to defend and tell people the truth and let them know what the real is. And so
Right.
I know you
Right.
said that your dad was very adamant in you learning about your culture. And what about your mom? Was she also a participant in that as well?
My mom was a lifelong educator. She taught history, and she also was an English teacher.
Okay.
And then she became a principal for the last 20 years of
Okay.
her education career.
Okay.
So she also, before that, she was a part of the civil rights movement, you
Mm.
know, in upstate New York. So
Okay.
she was like a pro-black uh, Black American.
Okay.
So she really, I want to say her ties with my father was probably her looking to connect with her African roots as well.
Mm-hmm.
She did her ancestry, and she's mostly Nigerian. She was mostly Nigerian.
Okay.
And she also had some origins from the Congo. And then she had some from a little small percentage from Europe, and
Of course.
also from Native American. So,
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Now, do
mhm.
you have siblings as well, and are they as involved in their ancestry too, like you are?
I have six brothers and sisters, and we all embrace our African heritage.
Okay.
Not all of them are on it as hard as me as I am.
Mm-hmm.
My brother, he is really my eldest brother. He has always been into music, so he's been producing some African music recently.
Okay.
So when we were kind of both in music at the same time, but he was doing more like gospel music and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. But
Mm-hmm.
now he's getting into the African spirituality, the music, along with his church and whatnot, the things that he does.
Okay. And I know that she said you were in the music industry. Do you play any instruments or anything like that?
I was good at playing the Triton, which is just like a keyboard, making beats and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's basically like a piano style in an MPC, also making beats on those things. So I was pretty good at that. But as an instrument playing, I mean, I played drums in high school and things like that.
Okay.
But for the most part, no, I was more. I was a rap artist,
Mm.
and I was mainly behind the scenes as producing the beats, so to speak.
Okay. Awesome. And then as far as I'm gonna delve into the book a little more deeply. I'm just gonna ask you a couple more questions about you, and then we'll go into that. What parts of your culture on both sides do you really enjoy? Like for me, I feel like on the Nigerian side, I love like our boldness, our food, our dancing. Like I love just
Uh-huh.
a lot of things about our culture. So what do you love about that side? And then also what about your Black American side?
Well, I love, I share in just like yourself, we share in the pain and joy
Hmm.
of being an African and being an African American. But
Hmm.
what I always loved about my African side is the connection with my royal ancestry.
Okay.
The fufu, egusi soup, peanut butter
Okay.
soup,
Yes.
okra soup. We could go all down the line with our wonderful foods that we have.
Yes.
Our style of dress, our music,
Hmm.
um, the spirituality. I mean, all of these different things, just a great history, being able to know where you come from. Those are beautiful things. On my African American side, I love hip hop. I love hip hop music.
Hmm.
Um, I love the culture. I love even the civil rights movement was so intriguing to see guys like Dr. King rise up.
Yes.
Um, I was I was always a big fan of guys like Muhammad Ali,
Mm-hmm.
um, Malcolm X, as I mentioned, Dr. King, Tupac, big Tupac fan. Like I used to argue with people about Tupac. Like
He's a prophet.
people would tell me, yes, people would tell me he's not lyrical. I'm like, what do y'all call lyrics? Like lyrics means you're saying something, you're speaking to the
Mhm.
heart, you know. So
Yes.
I would debate with people about that over here on the East Coast, about how much his music meant. And what I really liked about him, same thing with Malcolm X, is these two brothers, they really would give you their pain, they'll give
Yes.
you their rage,
Mm-hmm.
they'll give you their sadness. And those are things that most us men, we don't do typically.
We don't talk
We
about
don't truly show our heart, open up our heart to the world.
it.
And I really admired that about him. So guys like him, guys like Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Michael Jackson, Prince, love Prince, probably the greatest musician of all time.
Mm-hmm.
um, so guys like that. So I embrace that side of the American culture. The thing that I would say that I have recently stopped doing is um, allowing myself to watch slavery movies. That is something that I took out of my life,
Okay.
because it wasn't doing anything good for me. It was making me very angry. I got to a point where I realized transatlantic slave trade happened and what it did to our brothers and sisters over here
Yes.
in America.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I'm not going to keep allowing it to anger me and stress me. I more or less would like to connect more with our royal heritage, which is not
Mm-hmm.
talked about. So
That's important because I think as a person and when you are in tune with your spirituality, you need to know what's going to mess with it, what's going to elevate you,
right,
and what's going to take you down. It's important that we stay secret.
exactly,
So that's very
exactly.
important, very very important. And then with your book, Black Pharaoh: Rise to Power. When you started writing this book, what I know that you said that you wanted to let people know, but just go into in depth a little bit about that. What were you trying to accomplish with this book, or what do you want to accomplish?
It's the same thing that
Mm-hmm.
I think secretly my father was doing the same thing when he did that project that I mentioned earlier, that
Mm-hmm.
he wanted to let it be known that we know this. We know that having this Sudanese man on the cover of the book was very important for me to show how blackness was considered beautiful in ancient
Yes.
Egypt,
Okay.
and in comparison to where we are today. And that's why I put this very dark skinned man on the cover to
He's
show that
beautiful.
elegance. Yeah, exactly. The beauty, the power, the strength, the confidence,
Mm-hmm.
to really empower not just the African diaspora, but on any of those who know the truth of the African origin of human life. I
Right.
think that was very important. So I found a story. My original goal was to write about my great ancestor, Shaka Zulu. If
Okay.
you look at my last name, Kulu, it is derived from the Bantu speakers in the Zulu tribe.
Okay.
So I wanted to write about him, but I ran
Mm-hmm.
into some issues, copyright issues with the 1986 Shaka Zulu movie, which is one of the greatest movies of all time, need I say.
Okay. Yes. I have to
um,
agree with you on that.
yes. So if you have not seen that movie, you guys in the audience,
Yeah.
go see the 1986 Shaka Zulu TV series. It was actually from 1986 to 1997, if I'm
We
not
used to watch it
mistaken.
every year.
Yep, it was the most watched television series of all time at that time. And it's just stuff that you would never know.
Mm-hmm.
But that also piqued my interest. Like African films have always been sought after for
Mm-hmm.
views.
Yes.
So with that, I wanted to make a new movie. Again, I ran into some copyright issues with the original Shaka Zulu film, so I kind of had to table that. And I said, okay, my goal is to tell African stories.
Mm-hmm.
Where can I start that would really intrigue people? And then I remembered my childhood. I remember what I went through with that project. And I said, ancient Egypt.
Okay.
Dad was trying to do the same thing. I absolutely think it's time for me to take this courageous jump and do something like that myself
Right.
and give it to the world. So I started this journey. I studied about Hatshepsut and Tutmosis III. Tutmosis because he's probably a similar conquering warrior pharaoh like Shaka was in South Africa.
Okay.
So I was looking for a character, and I was between him and Hannibal Barca of Carthage.
Okay.
And I chose Tutmosis III because I felt like Egypt is like the modern monarch of all civilization.
Okay.
But then as I got studying Tutmosis III, I came across his stepmother, Hatshepsut, which was an African queen who ruled for 20 to 25 years. Now, it's very key to note that Hatshepsut, in the time that she reigned, it was not a feminist paradise. Egypt was not a feminist paradise. It was still a misogynistic world at that time. But she was on the throne as the sole ruler for 20 to 25 years. And in fact, this reign was the most peaceful reign that Egypt had ever seen.
I wonder why.
Well, there you go. And Hatshepsut was no joke now.
Right.
Hatshepsut declared war on the Nubians. She submitted many countries to Egyptian colonization, so to speak. So she was a powerful leader and a great influencer of her time. It is said that when she died, that thousands of nations gathered for her funeral. So this was an influential queen and a war-conquering king, Tutmosis III.
Okay.
So I was able to combine those stories and come up with this excellent masterpiece, I, Black Pharaoh, Rise to Power, and tell this story from a historical standpoint. Now, there's been many guys like Sheka Enti Diop, Ivan Van Sertima, Dr. Henry Clark, who've also spoke on the African origins on ancient Egypt, but no one has done a historical fiction novel, which takes you into the realm of Egypt. Now, there's been books where the facts are stated, but my book actually takes you into the fantasy, the mythology, the life of how these people lived. Well, sometimes when we think about Egypt, we think about like mysteries and how did they build the pyramids and the gods they worshiped and things like that. But this book takes you into the life of how they lived because they were people. They were human beings.
Yes.
So it's good to note that even though these scholars are trying to say that aliens built the pyramids.
I never understand.
Which I won't. Well,
I mean, I understand. I understand.
You understand it. Yeah. Anything to say Africans didn't do it,
right.
No, and that they couldn't do so. So that was the motivation behind it, is knowing all of these things, studying all these things, finding these interesting stories. And I also wanted to make a book that I can have it like that movie feel,
Okay. And have you visited Cameroon or Egypt? Okay.
Yep, both. I've been to both. And I enjoyed when I went to Egypt, I was able to see the museum in Luxor, Cairo, and Aswan. And as you go to Egypt, you would notice that most of the modern day Egyptian people in Cairo, they are of Arabic descent. They're not Black Africans. But if you go to Aswan, you will find most of the native or indigenous people to Egypt. And then there's other Egyptians that have scattered throughout the African continent. At one point, it's really key to note, at one point, the Sahara was not a desert. It was a very fertile land at one point. So that's something that we need to know why a lot of these Egyptian people started to migrate south as the Sahara dried up. So, but yes, I was privileged to go there, do a lot of studies, see the pyramids, question some different things that were out. I listened to a seminar from Zahi Hawass, who is the head of antiquities studies in Egypt. And here's something that I found very interesting that he said. He said the ancient Egyptians were dark skinned, but they were not Negro. And I actually just did some research on that, right? And what I discovered was early archaeologists, when they actually started to come into Egypt and study the antiquities of Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
they were studying based off a big biblical narrative to connect the Bible to ancient Egypt at
Mm-hmm.
first.
Right.
So in in order to do that, they had to separate Egypt from Africa without accrediting the people that were being colonized at that time. So what they did is they created two different kinds of black people.
Mm-hmm.
One was called the Hamite, which is anyone of dark skin or slightly narrow nose or slightly thin hair would be considered a Hamite.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the Negro, which are the real black Africans or sub-Saharan Africans. So they created these two divisions of black people to separate Egypt, to separate India from what we call Negroes today.
Okay.
Very interesting stuff that happened in the formation of Egyptology. So I challenge anyone who is interested in this to really research this stuff, to really know the depths of how white supremacy, closed the mouths of guys like Dr. Henry Clark and guys like Sheka Anta Diop, and why it takes so much courage to speak out about this at this time.
Right. I think it's very interesting that they try to separate the two, because I know growing up, I remember reading about Noah in the Bible. You know, his three sons, like Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
Mhm.
I think that was the
Right.
three sons. And I think they said that, you know, the reason why they made the Negroids, or the people of the Negroid section, slaves, was because of that.
Hmm.
So
Yep. They said that Ham was cursed. That
yes,
Ham was cursed. And the Bible clearly tells you that the sons of Ham were Mizraim, which was considered to be Egypt.
right.
Now, here's a connection with the Israelites.
Hmm.
If you were to prove that the Egyptians were black Africans, you would have to acknowledge that the Egyptians mixed with the Israelites, the ancient Israelites,
Exactly.
because Joseph had an Egyptian wife,
Hmm.
Abraham had an Egyptian wife, right?
Hmm.
And Joseph's brothers had Egyptian wives, and Moses had a Cushite wife.
Yeah,
So,
she was black. Hmm.
exactly. So, clearly, the mixing, even if these Israelites, let's say they were Middle Eastern people, they still were a very mixed race
Hmm.
that mixed with a bunch of many different people who conquered them from time to time. So
Right.
again, to acknowledge that Egypt was Black African would have to also acknowledge that the Israelites were either half Black African or a strong percentage of Black Africa.
That's very, very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, do you have any? I know you said that you have the one book that's out, and then you have another book that's coming up. Tell us a little bit. I know you can't give us too much. Just give us just a little sample of what we have to look forward to for your next
Yeah.
project. Whatever you can tell us.
Yeah, so I, Black Pharaoh Golden Age of Triumph will be releasing under Pennant Publications in the spring. We don't have an exact date yet because
Okay.
we're still waiting for illustrations. With the first book, it has one illustration in the beginning of the book,
Hmm.
but these ones will be colored in illustrations. So the book is actually going to be a little bit more expensive. The sisters down there asking where could she buy the book. The book is on Amazon. You can also buy it on Pennant Publications, Barnes and Nobles. It's on all the platforms.
Okay.
But yes. So as I was saying, Golden Age of Triumph is going to have 25 illustrations.
Okay.
So not only will you be able to read the first, which is the same novel as the first one, but you'll have actually 3 new chapters added to this book, Golden Age of Triumph. So it's a
Mhm.
second edition of the first, but it's going to include 25 pictures, illustrations, and also it's going to include 3 brand new chapters. And the cover of the book is going to be 14 karat color gold. So to
Like that.
really, so it's going to be a very nice looking book as well.
Okay.
So yes, look for that. If you sign up on iblackpharaoh.com, You can go to the contact area just requesting information on when the release date will be, and we will be sending those out through our email blast, how we do it once a month.
Okay. And guys, I'm going to also include his information on my stories and on the IGTV when I post it later on today. And so I'm going to go ahead and let you get back to your day, like I said earlier, it is Valentine's Day. And before I leave, I just like to do something just a little fun at the end. I know I asked you about your culture before, but I like to I'm weird. So I want to just think about, if you're going to give your culture a personality, each culture, what would it be, or what color would it be?
Okay, so I got to do both sides, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the African side, color wise,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say green. I'm going to say
Okay.
green.
Okay.
African colors, green, yellow, red, are pretty much the dominant colors.
Yes.
And then I'm going to say on the American side, red, because I feel like it's been what drives the American spirit, or the African American spirit, is blood, sweat, and tears.
Yes.
So that's what I'll go with. Green for my African side and red for the American side.
Okay. Awesome.
And you said there was another part to that question?
I said a personality. Like if you want to give a
Personality.
personality to each side, what would it be?
Personality trait on the African side, determined.
Okay.
The American side would be resilient.
Yes, I love
Resilient
that,
personality.
because they both go hand in hand.
Yes.
We help each other out. And then since we are Africans, in a sense, we're all African at the end of the day, but I just like to use that little cute word. What are some words of encouragement that you can give the next generation going forward?
Well, I speak for all people as humans, and I also am going to say something to the African diaspora. First, the
Mhm.
African diaspora, because
Okay.
speaking to my people is very important. When I say the African diaspora, I'm not just talking about people who were born on the continent.
Right.
I'm talking about people who have lineage back to
Yes.
Africa. My
Yes.
father always told me, what is 400 years of slavery compared to 3,000 years of royalty? And some say
Okay.
10,000 plus years. So we can
Okay.
go deeper into that.
All
But
the way back.
embracing our royal lineage, we know about transatlantic slave trade. We
Mm-hmm.
know the brutality,
Mm-hmm.
the things that we faced in our past. I think
Right.
now it's time to look at what we don't know.
Yes.
So, I've faced so many death threats for speaking on the Black African origins of ancient Egypt. I've faced
Mm-hmm.
death threats. I've received hate mail for what I'm doing. And, one thing I learned is to face everything and rise. Fear.
Mm-hmm.
Face everything and rise,
That's all.
especially when you love something. When you
Yes.
love something, go all out for it, you know. And that's what I've done. I've educated myself to make sure I know what I'm talking about. So
Yes.
that's a part of it too. Don't
Mhm.
just speak from the heart or in a reaction, because you're not going to get anywhere that way.
Be educated.
So be educated. Be educated. The second part to that is for the entire world, is if we're going to restore history, if we're going to
Mm-hmm.
consider ourselves archaeologists, anthropologists, we
Mm-hmm.
have to look at the whole entire spectrum.
Yes.
The problem is we have been looking through a Eurocentric lens
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
too long.
Yes.
When we see things like the modern day lynching of George Floyd, we see that happen, and we're asking this question: where does it go back to? It
Mm-hmm.
goes back to our education of ourselves, and it comes back to our education of how other people view Africans in the diaspora.
Right.
If children, right now, there's a curriculum out right now called Black Lives Matter curriculum, which many families have the option to take it. But
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, did we have an option to learn about ancient Greece? Did we have an option to learn about ancient Rome? Did we have an option to learn about transatlantic slave trade? There was no options for
No.
us. So I think it's very key that we dig deeper than what's on the surface of the
Mhm.
curriculums out there, correct what the miseducation has been, in order
Yes.
to truly find the truth of the depths of all world history. And all history started in Africa. That is
Mhm.
a scientific fact.
Yes.
So it's time for us to, as a human society, to stop minimizing Africa. Stop painting this picture that all Africa is
Yes.
impoverished and
Thank you.
flies flying around little
Thank
kids' heads
you.
and
Because it's
big
all we saw as
bellies, and
kids.
it's war and
Mhm.
unrest. The time has come for a true resurgence of the
Yes.
truth through us. So I think for all people, life started in Africa. So
Hmm.
if we continue to degrade Africa, we are simply degrading all of human society.
Right. Right. Well, that's a whole word right there, and I really really thank you for your time today, for your knowledge. I've learned some things, and
You're welcome.
I feel like we should always be evolving and picking up and learning stuff every day. So I really really
Every
appreciate you
day.
today, and like I said, I'm gonna
This
put
is the time, sister. This is the time. And I just
you.
want to throw one more thing out there for everybody out there.
Mhm.
Black History Month is just not Black American history.
It's not.
Black History Month is for the entire diaspora.
Yes.
Remember Patrice Lumumba. Remember Kwame Nkrumah.
Hmm.
Remember, Nelson Mandela. Remember
Yes.
Shaka Zulu. Remember
Yes.
Tutmos. Remember Hatshepsut, Ya Shantue, Queen Imani Reyes. Remember your entire line as much as you can
Yes.
study and remember about your people to really embrace that power that we once were.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a blessed rest of your day. And I'll be putting your
You
information
too.
out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sister.
All
God
right.
bless.
Thank you. Guys, I just want to thank y'all for joining me this afternoon. I know it's Sunday and it's Valentine's Day, but thank y'all for joining me today. And I'll be posting his information later. And I hope y'all have a blessed one. I hope y'all learned something. And God bless. Love you. Bye.